Blessings BookTube. Today I have a pretty interesting, I hope, type of analysis of major literary work, Anna Karenina, viewed from a certain angle, and I think you'll like it.
I like to read. You do too. Let's get ridiculous.
Although I am a big fan of trying to put medical diagnoses on historical characters, by people qualified to do so, I've always been kind of skeptical of psychological analyses of, um, um, literary characters. I mean, I've seen some really well done ones and some really poorly done ones. Um, so about half and half, I would say, in print literature by literary critics. However, I found the psychoanalysis by booktubers to be quite good and quite fascinating. I'm thinking of people like, I think it was a book Olive, or was it Emmy? I think it was a book Olive. Did some good ones. And so it got me thinking back to this paper that I had written in my social work studies in abnormal psych class. We had to do what they call retrogressive analysis of a literary character. I chose Anna Karenina for obvious reasons. And so here is a retrogressive analysis of the suicide of Anna Karenina. I must say that I find this case that I make here pretty unconvincing, so don't feel bad if you also do. And it starts with a little epitaph. It says she has that fatal blend of innocence and corruption, by Tolstoy, of course. The abstract says it is the aim of this case study to develop a retrogressive analysis in search of causes for the suicide of Anna K., a middle-aged female of the class of landed gentry in 19th century Russia. The analysis will present elements, demographic, cognitive, affective, and behavioral, in support of a diagnosis of PTSD. Those treatment options will be suggested from among current best practices, which would have been available at the time, specifically those clustered around a theoretical framework of mindfulness. Patient. Beside the paucity of protective factors available to Anna in her historic situation, there are a number of high-risk factors making her susceptible to suicide. She is female, and we know that females attempt suicide much more often than men. Their efforts are often less lethal because they avoid messy methods, but Anna uses a messy male method, jumping in front of a train, suggested to her by her original trauma of witnessing a poor man scavenging coal getting run over by a train. This method is immediately 100% effective. Anna is approaching middle age at the time of her death. It is likely she is premenopausal, but her family relationship was already vexed. Anna, being of the class of landed gentry in Russia, she would have had little relationship with her own children, who would be raised by wet nurses and nannies, and often sent away to school. Servants run the house, and her husband is a civil servant with little time for her. Russia can spare you, he states at one point. Anna lacks a sense of purpose. Her options are very narrow as well. Women of her station had no vocation in the Russia of that era. The Orthodox Church is fairly monolithic, some say fatalistic. All this contributes to Anna's constrained locus of control and escapist fantasies, from romantic novels to affairs of the heart to repeated flights and ultimately to death. The life of a woman of her class consisted of piano recitals and balls, and once Anna becomes an object of gossip and scorn among the other women of her class because of her affair, she becomes more and more isolated and must guard against interiorizing the sense of shame the gossips think she ought to show. It is not our purpose here to delve into all the reasons Russia so often leads the world in suicide rates. Anna does not appear to suffer from alcoholism, alcohol being a factor in over half and perhaps as many as three-quarters of suicides. She may, however, suffer from depression, exacerbated by seasonal affective disorder. We do not have enough information to assert this. Diagnosis. It's hard not to oversimplify such cases, yet Anna's suicide has kept up lively scholarly debate for over a century. Suicide is a multidimensional phenomenon, according to Jacobs and Klein, Benheim, 1995, with multiple factors including but not limited to current psychiatric illness, personality disturbance, biological factors, family history, medical illness, and psychosocial stressors. Anna showed signs of negative cognition in statements such as, "Forgive me for being so thoughtless, selfish, wretched." She also shows signs of a constricted locus of control. "I will escape from him and from myself," in the fatal train station, Where do they crawl? You can't escape from yourself. It was myself I really loved. Nothing can change our thoughts. These traits are confirmed in statements made by other characters as well. The princess trying to warn her, I believe you're rather inclined to the tragic, and Vronsky at the end, if you're so determined to punish yourself, there's nothing I can do. There do certainly seem to be hints of depressive episodes in Anna's life story. Losses contributing to her suicide include her abandonment of her son and Vronsky's near suicide, as well as her husband's refusal to divorce her, which she feels will cause Vronsky to leave her. You said yourself we can't go on like this. Despite Anna's fear of conspiracy with Vronsky's mother, Vronsky does not intend to leave her. Her husband's intransigence has abated before. Her few remaining society friends try to guide her out of scandal, and servants conspire to let her see her son. Something is distorting her perceptions and presenting suicide as a last option. Because Anna chose to kill herself in a manner imitative of her original trauma, death by train, it seems likely that her PTSD most directly contributed to her suicide, even if it is not the proximate cause. We will develop the case for linking her PTSD to her suicide, first by supporting a diagnosis of PTSD, and in the end by sketching an outline towards a retrospective analysis of her suicide. Before we turn to causal elements, cognitive, affective, and behavioral, let us review the necessary conditions for declaring a diagnosis of PTSD according to DSM-5. 1. Exposure to a traumatic event. 2. Intrusive symptoms, involuntary memories, recurrent dreams, dissociative reaction, e.g. flashbacks, distress at cues, and physiological reactions. And 3. Avoidance of associated stimuli. 4. Mood cognitive changes, negative beliefs about self, inability to remember event. 5. Changes in reactivity arousal, e.g. extreme startle response, hypervigilance, sleep problems. And 6. Symptoms last more than 1 month. Symptoms. There are 5 significant scenes that depict Anna's PTSD. Affective. Firstly, there's a scene where Anna meets her beau and in which an old man scavenging is run over by the train. Anna witnesses this from quite close by. Her feelings of horror can be inferred from her shudder at the sound of the whistle and the scream. Her startle response in this instance is adaptive and appropriate. Anna's flashback scene should be understood as a cinematic flashback, but psychologically, absent dissociative reaction, it is better understood as an involuntary memory. Her startle response in this instance is less adaptive and appropriate and more one of hypervigilance. These scenes satisfy several of the criteria for a diagnosis of PTSD. Exposure to a traumatic event, 1. Distress at cue, whistle, scream, 2. And physiological reactions and shudder, 2. Involuntary memory, 2. Extreme startle response, hypervigilance, 5, is more involuntary than would be the more behavioral avoidance of associative stimulus, 3. Okay, cognitive now. In the seance scene, Anna shares a recurring dream she has of an old railroad man with a white beard, like the one she saw go under the train. Her reaction to the dream is that it is somehow tied up with my death. We might infer that from her reaction to the dream, she treats it as a nightmare and is likely to be awakened when she has the dream. At this point, Anna has been living with this distress for well over 1 month, more likely over a year. This scene satisfies several of the criteria for diagnosis of PTSD. Recurring dream, 2. Negative view of death, self, 4. Sleep problems, 5. Symptoms lasting more than 1 month, 6. The hallucination scene after her baby is stillborn is more complicated. Although the old man with the hammer tapping appears, his image is dispersed by the arrival of Anna's husband, come to forgive her. But she fails to recognize him at first. She further dissociates. I'm still the woman I used to be. That other woman in me, she fell in love. Now, behavioral. Finally, we come to the suicide scene. The visions provoked by what she witnessed has persisted for years in involuntary memories and nightmares. Her mood and cognition have become more negative. She cannot seem to escape her pain. Wherever she flees, she must take the train with its screeching attack on her nerves. It is no symbol of technology and a shrinking world that runs over Anna. She throws herself under real, hard, heavy, deadly metal. Her cognition in this moment reminds us not to be too reductive in declaring her suicide due to PTSD. Clearly, interpersonal conflict played a role. She started thinking once again with her enjoyment of how he, Vronsky, would torment himself, repent, and love the memory of her when it was already too late. In Same Now's view, we are to rule out borderline personality disorder. That's 211 is the reference we'll see at the end. Treatment. We're still learning the horrific costs of PTSD and effective interventions for limiting loss of life as well as quality of life. There are promising avenues such as systemic exposure therapy and eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EDMR treatment. For Anna, we will need to limit ourselves to treatments available in her time frame and geographic location. Luckily, with Russia situated between the West and the East, we can draw not only on the nascent theories emerging in Vienna, notably Freud's work with nightmares, but also with what we might today call mindfulness-based therapeutic interventions brought to Russia from the Far East by eclectic travelers such as Gurdjieff, Blavatsky, Uspensky, etc. Let us begin with Anna's nightmares. Freud literally wrote the book on the interpretation of dreams. Dreams are his royal road to unlocking the unconscious. Nightmares cause some confusion to his theory, however. For Freud, dream content seeks to satisfy unconscious desires of childhood, but content must be disguised with the day's residues through transference so as not to wake the dreamer. He considers even dreams of punishment as fulfilling wishes. That references Truda, 2015. The censor fails in the case of nightmares, which for Freud always result in awakening. Freud is dismissive of traumatic neuroses resulting from accidents, disasters, and war. Man is the first weapon of war, quotes Dennis Winter of the Crimean. Ibid. Freud confounds traumatic neurosis with hysteria. His explanation for their repeating is that children like repetition in their play. Freud explains tremors, terrors, tears, rage, even vomiting as secondary gain from illness, i.e. remaining unfit for active duty. World War I malingerers were sometimes shocked literally to death. Freud's theory of deferred action could explain nightmares well, and his reluctance to do so must show further proof of his resistance to the very idea of trauma. Freud feared the tangle of dream thoughts. This is the dream's navel, the spot where it reaches down into the unknown, Ibid. Freud wishes to consign trauma dreaming to the oubliette. No doubt this would have been the course he would follow with Anna. Would her dream disappear or reemerge with a vengeance if repressed? Anna asks us, why not turn out the lights when there's nothing more to be seen? So we must turn to the East. And there follows a discussion of yoga for PTSD, etc., 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 and Jung, mandalas, all of that good stuff. And it ends with all happy families are alike, even unhappy families. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. And with the references, which are Jacobs and Klein, Benheim, 1995, the psychological autopsy, a useful tool for determining proximate causation in suicide cases from the Bolam Academy of Psychiatric Law, 23.2, Same Now S of 2011, Anna Karenina Studying Character from Psychology Today, 9/15/11, Tereda R, 2016, Nightmares, the Navel of Freud's Dreaming, AJP 25.2, and Wells S, Lang A, Schmaltz L, Strauss J, 2016, Yoga as an Intervention for PTSD, a Theoretical Rationale Review of the Literature, Springer International Publishing AG. All right, so there you have it. A diagnosis of PTSD for Anna Karenina, contributing to her suicide, according to this rather questionable paper I drew up for a class some years ago now. Anyway, it's all a bit of fun. Not for Anna, though. Except that, of course, PTSD is a very serious and real thing. And luckily, we are developing, as I mentioned briefly in there, better coping mechanisms and treatment options for people suffering from that. All right, so let me know, what is your diagnosis of Anna Karenina? Or any other literary character that it might take your fancy to diagnose, as armchair psychiatrists. Thank you for indulging me with this, and I really would enjoy your comments if you enjoyed this. Thanks.